Welcome. My name is Moonlight Mystic. I am a creative intuitive, and my passion, my heart, is the shadow world, the shadow work, and the evolution of soul energy. I believe in the new world, and I believe in the governance of the spiritual principle. And in this channel, we are exploring the emotional underworld. This is the place of the energy, the energetic patterns of consciousness and of the shadow. And it is also the place of one's light. And we are able to work with the mirror reflection. Once we understand the navigation of that concept. So, welcome. How to trust yourself. There are four to five aspects that we need to look at. When we are looking at how to trust ourselves, there is many aspects to the self. There are many aspects to the way in which Tricky Shadow interacts with our consciousness and our perception of reality and of the reflection, what is being reflected back. So trusting the self is something that is about one's own paradigm. It is about creating the paradigm and the concept of self in a way that is clear, in a way that is distinct, that is that one can witness the self and therefore trust the self. Okay, how can we trust the self unless we first witness the self? So that is number one. Number one is to recognize that trusting the self is in and of itself a process. It is the building of a relationship with the self that is within you. Okay, that means to dig deep, to commune and listen to the heart. That is to find within the experience of self that is reflected back the shadow. So in exploring trust of self, we have to first explore the ways in which we are not trusting ourselves. And when we can approach this new way of being, this new way of living from that perspective that it is a journey, it is a process, it is something that we engage with and we interrelate with the reflections of the external world and the reflections of the inner world. And because trust is such it is difficult to trust because we don't understand what are the spiritual principles of trust. So that's number one. Number one, it requires of us to become the silent witness and the observer. so that we can observe when things come up, and we can observe the self in the ways in which we fail to trust ourselves. Okay, and we go from that platform because we have been conditioned into a paradigm that says when we are trying to master something, that it comes down to we either have that or we don't, or we in terms of navigating the trust of self, we have to find the self so that we can navigate the trust of self. And there are times when we are experiencing life and we find it really difficult to trust ourselves. So now we're moving into step 2. Okay, so step 1 is the silent witness, the observer of all the ways in which we are not trusting ourselves. Okay, become aware of it, and we come from a place of acceptance. We're not and non-judgment. This is a process of discovery of the self and the polarity of the shadow and the light, that is the mixture that is there. Okay, so secondly, we need to build the relationship with the self, and that is to, in a way, take 1 step forward and 2 steps back. And we have looked at this perception of progress, let's say, from a negative standpoint. To take 1 step forward and 2 steps back is to step forward in terms of the movement of exploration and of witnessing and of trusting something. We step forward, we make a movement towards something, and then we take 2 steps back. That is to view trust as something that is fluid, as something with fluidity and acceptance. Being patient, allowing life to speak, allowing life to reveal what is in your heart, allowing life to be the feedback mechanism within that identifies the territory of self. Okay, so you are currently interacting with and observing the reflection and witnessing the movement of what is happening within you, and giving it complete acceptance and being patient and allowing for these situations to speak to you, or where you find it hardest to trust yourself. Okay? We can, in these moments when we take 1 step forward and 2 steps back, we can find within that place the voice of the accuser, the voice of the critic, the telling of the story, the energetic pattern of consciousness that keeps us in a place of not being able to trust. Okay, we find those blockages and those beliefs and those ways of perceiving within ourselves. Okay. We need to be able to spot within ourselves the fear. What are we afraid of? We need to spot within ourselves, what are we resisting? Okay? And what are we making judgments about? Okay. Now, when you're doing that, you are navigating two worlds. You are walking between two worlds. Okay. And we have the external reflection of experiences of life and of people and of situations and all these sorts of things. We have that external reflection, but we also have the inner reflection of how we are perceiving what is being reflected back to us. Okay, what is the dialogue? What is the story? What is the position? And what is the belief that holds you in that position? Okay, that is the beginning of trusting the self, is to find all the ways in which you are not connecting to your heart and not connecting to the self. This is how we begin to know the self. We have to first know the shadow. We have to first know the fear, the resistances that we experience, and the judgments that we are making. Whether we are making that judgment projecting, making that judgment out onto the external world, or whether we are making that judgment internally. We have beliefs that say we have to trust other people to make decisions for us, or we have to be this certain person in this certain situation because we've been conditioned to do that, and we are ignoring an underlying movement of heart energy that is wanting to be expressed and heard and felt and seen. Okay, and this can only be heard, felt and seen when we move into full acceptance of non-judgment, and we break down what are the fears and what are the resistances within me. Okay, there are two types of people in this world. There are people that will want to control you, and there are people that will want to support you. Knowing which is important. Be selective about whom you choose to trust with your heart, with your vision, with your dream, with whatever it is that you want to step forward into. Okay, because we need to know that we are finding the reflection that is supportive, not the reflection that is controlling, because the reflection that is controlling is a form of shadow that is preventing you from trusting yourself. Because it wants to control you and conform you into trusting the external religion of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, and the structure that is in society, that we all individually integrate it in some way and apply it to our heart and to our spiritual energy. That is to constrict, that is to contract, and that is to block the light, the trust within that light. Okay. We are navigating the emotional underworld of paradigms. We are walking between the two worlds. So oftentimes when we are trusting ourselves, it will go against the grain of what maybe society may say or believe, or what the general consensus is, and it may clash with the way in which we've perceived the self and how the self should be presented or turn up. And so it is a movement of deep acceptance, trust. It is a movement of deep acceptance of the self. And that means that acceptance of the self requires that we untangle ourselves. We become entangled within all kinds of fears and resistances and judgments of self, because we are taught not to trust ourselves, to trust the expert, to trust our parents, to trust, and I'm not saying that that's wrong to trust your parents. I'm just saying that sometimes if we do not evolve, if there is an arrested development and we do not evolve in terms of empowering the self to trust one's own directive, then we are confronted with those shadows and we have to press past them. That is how we trust self. Trusting the self is so connected to accepting the self, and I think they go hand in hand. And we can only give the self-acceptance when we know what are the programs, what are the beliefs, what are the resistances and the fears and the judgments that are coming up within us in terms of this paradigm of reality, of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Okay, we have to leave the old paradigm and move into a new paradigm. Trusting the self is about finding the evolution of your soul, and finding the transition out of shadow. And once we come out of the shadow energy, then trusting the self is also about accepting one's light. And sometimes we can be aware of the shadow, but then it takes courage to push past the shadow and then to come out of one's shell. And that is the second transitional process when we are coming out of our shell. That means we are leaving behind the old encrusted way of perceiving self that we have adopted within our psyche, within our consciousness, and within our energy. The way in which we deal with ourselves, in our lives, in our world, with and how we deal with other people. Okay, and so it is a path of empowerment to trust oneself, and that empowerment comes through finally tuning into the self. Okay. And the last thing, so let's recap. Trusting yourself is about employing the awareness and non-judgment, the silent witness and the observer of all the ways in which we are not trusting ourselves. Okay, that's number one. Number two is building the relationship with the self. That is taking one step forward and 2 steps back. Okay, so, look how I responded there. Look at my thoughts. Look at the way I reacted. Look at all these things. It is not about, it is no longer about projecting that out into the external environment. It is about self-awareness. So it is a different energy. And self-awareness leads to self-empowerment. Ironic, right? And then, so that's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That's number 2. Number 1 is the awareness of non-judgment and being the silent witness. Number 3, there's 2 types of people in the world. It's coming into the navigation of what supports you, what supports that thing that you want to manifest. What is supportive of that? Who are the people that are supportive of that? You know, and it's allowing yourself to come out of the prison. So finding the supportive self, finding the reflective self, finding the acceptance and awareness of the self. Because what we need to realize is that self is a what did I write here? Self is changing all the time. Self is a concept of evolution, because when we begin to trust ourselves, then we are able to take what is being reflected back, the feedback mechanism, not as a rejection, not as a judgment, not as a projected shadow that we fall under. You know, we become the driver of the consciousness and the driver of the energy. And so, you know, we can accept that trust of the self is fluid. It is a movement and a motion, and you know, we don't